Okay, so we're going to talk about many different ways to do median and quartile calculations in Excel. So this is a collaboration with OpenStax. You can access the OpenStax textbook for free. You can find a link to the book in the description of this video. Also, the workbook that I'm working out of is totally free. You can look in the description of this video, or you can go to divideandconquermath.com, go to the OpenStax statistics section, and look for chapter 2. So I'm on the median and quartiles tab of my workbook, and when I open this file, my real estate prices, they looked like this. So if you have like these pound signs, you can just expand the columns so that you can see all the real estate prices. Okay, so we're talking about median and quartile. This is a whole thing we have to talk about though, because Excel versus what the book does are actually two radically different things. So first thing we are going to do is I've got this list of data. So we're going to use Excel to sort the data from smallest to largest, because if you're doing a median calculation by hand or a quartile calculation by hand, then you need to know it from smallest to largest. So I select my data, I go to the Home tab, and so if I go here to this filter from A to Z, if I click on it, it says sort smallest to largest, so it will just automatically do that. So if you have to do this by hand, I strongly recommend at least typing the data into Excel, because it'll just make your life easier. Okay, so now this is where everything can kind of start to go awry. So first things first, you need to know how many data points do you have. Now, you don't have to count these by hand. You can actually use Excel to do this. So if I select all the data points, so one thing that Excel always does is if you look down in this corner, it will always take the average, it'll count and sum up the data points. So these are just 3 handy calculations to know. So I know that I have 13 data points. So the cool thing about that is that there is a middle data point in this case. So if I go to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this data point here is directly in the middle. So you'll notice that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 data points below, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 data points above. So the good news is that the median is the median in all cases. Okay, now we know that the median is equivalent to Q2, so I am just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna just set it equal to that. Okay, so the median is the median in both of these calculations. So I'm doing this using what's known as the 2K method, which is what the OpenStax texts use, but I'm also gonna use what's known as the M&M method, which is a slightly different way to calculate this. But it's the same and it's the same, okay, to get the median. So that's the good news. So with the 2K method, so to find now your Q1, you ignore the median and you just look at these data points, and you basically now at this point, looking at these data points, you just repeat the process. So you need to find the middle data point of these. And so in this case, the middle data point would fall in between these 2 entries. And so in that case, what you need to do is you need to find the average of those 2 entries. So these 2 entries here, this is going to be your Q1. And then you do the same thing for your Q3. So I use these 6 data points, and so I find the average in between the 2. So these 2, the number in between is going to be what falls directly in between them. Now, the other way that you can do this in statistics is you can do what's called the M&M method. And what that does is that includes the median in your calculation. So now, so the median's the same in both, okay? But now I'm going to include the median in my calculation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here and I'm going to include the median. And in this case now, I have 1, 2, 3, so I can use Excel, right? So I can see this. I've got 7 data points. So in this case, if the median is included, then there is a clear middle data point, which would be this data point here, right? So it would be this one here, because then 3 are above and 3 are below. And then for Q3, so now I'm going to again include the median, and I find my Q3 from here to here. Same thing. So now I have this middle data point in between. Okay, so with both of these now, I can compute what's known as my IQR. My IQR is just taking Q3 minus Q1 in both cases. So I'll just type IQR for both of these. And you can see that I have a different IQR for each because I have a different way that I computed my Q1 and my Q3. Okay, this is the idea when you compute these numbers by hand. But you have to think, this is for a very small data set that we can do this for. If I had, say, 20,000 data points, I am not going to take the time to do all of this by hand, and I'm probably just going to use a computer. So I now want to show you what Excel does to find these measures. So Excel has built into it also this option of including or excluding the median. So there's a couple different formulas. So let's start again just like we did before. Let's start with just Q2. So if I type in median in my formula here, so I can just select all of this data. Let's see what Excel chooses. So Excel chooses the same median as what we found before. So the median is the median. So it doesn't matter for both of these are going to be the same. Okay. But now let's go to our quartile. So for my quartile function, so I'm going to type in quartile, and you'll see that Excel brings up here quartile excluding or quartile including. And so we're going to start with the inclusive formula. So I'm going to open this. And so the hints for the formula in this case, it asks for the array. So the array means what data do you want me to look at? So I want to look at this data. And then it wants to know what quartile do you want? And it gives you options so that you know which one to choose. So 1 is going to stand for first quartile, 2 is the median, 3 is going to be the third quartile. So I'm going to type in a 1 here. And now, so I want to point this out right out of the gate, you can see that this quartile aligned with our M&M method so far. Okay, now I am lazy. I don't want to have to retype this quartile formula over and over because if I retype it, then I have to keep hard coding in this number here where I say it's a 1, 2, or 3 for which quartile I want. So I always like to write everything as a formula. So also, I'm getting a little unhinged here. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a 1, 2, and 3 so that I can write one formula once that I can just drag. So what I'm going to do is, so before I had it ask me what quartile do you want, 1, 2, or 3. But now instead of typing a 1 here, I'm just going to replace it with this cell reference. So it's cell referencing this one. But what this is going to allow me to do is drag this formula. Now I do want to be careful. So remember, we've talked about dragging in other videos, and in the chapter 1 videos we talked about this. So notice if I drag this, so if I click on this formula, so you'll notice that my cell reference moved down. So that's also not what I wanted. So what I also need to do is I just need to lock. I need to lock this whole thing here. And so I'm going to put $ all around these references so that nothing moves. And if you don't know locking, I talked about it in the chapter 1 videos. I did a bunch of exercises on it, so I'm just going to refer you back to the chapter 1 videos. And you can check out my website and you can find all that there. Okay, so anyways, so now if I drag this, okay, so now let's look. So now this reference did not move, and this is now calculating Q2. And okay, so now I can just drag this all the way down. So I wrote one formula once, and everything was all good to go. And just to make this easier to look at, I'm going to format this with numbers and no decimals. So I can see that these 3 numbers are matching this method here. Cool. Okay. So there is, I'm going to get rid of the fill on all these things. Okay, so there's Excel computing one set of numbers. So now let's do the quartile one more time. And now we're going to do it exclusive. Same idea. So I'm going to select my array. I need to lock all of this. So remember, if you know that you need to lock something, you should do it while you're writing the formula. So now that I've just selected all those cells, I'm going to hit the F4 key, and notice how Excel locked all of my references right then and there. And then now you'll see that things are getting a little bit hairy on the screen. So I know in this little orange box, that's where I have that 1, 2, and 3. So when that happens, you can just click on like some dummy cell. Let's see. I'm going to click. No. Hold on. Back up. Okay, I'm gonna click on that. So you can just click, you can like arrow over. So you can see here I'm using the arrows on my keyboard. So usually you can click on some cell and then you can arrow over to what you want. So anyways, so there's the cell references that I want. Drag these down. Okay, cool. So, so now I can see that exclusive of the median, in this case, these matched up. And so then if I compute my IQR, so that's Q3 minus Q1, so we got the same things. Okay, but there is one thing I want to tell you. So in this case, this worked out, but sometimes when you have large sets of data, these actually do not match. So sometimes when you're working in the book, these might not match. And so when that happens, the reason why is that Excel actually uses a totally different way. Excel can't like order this by hand and then count things out. So it has this other, I don't know, I want to just shorten this to like saying like it's like a computer science-y way of like figuring out, you know, the most likely data point that would fit this description. So sometimes you're going to find that these numbers here might not match what you calculated by hand. And so that's okay. As you can see, there's not an agreed upon way to calculate quartiles. So even just by hand, we have two different ways. And it just depends on the book that you're using and what an author's preference is as to what to do. And then when you start getting into thousands of data points, you would never calculate quartiles by hand anyways. You would always use technology, and technology may end up slightly changing the way that it has to do that formula. But the spirit of it is that all of it is around the same. So the quartile is somewhere in the 300s range. The first quartile is somewhere in the 300s. The median is still the median. And then Q3, the third quartile, again, it's like kind of in that same neighborhood, right? So typically your quartiles, even though they might not be the exact same, they'll probably be close enough to get the sentiment of what you're trying to get for your data. So that's more than you ever wanted to know about quartiles, but there you go.